Okay. Hey, everybody. We are Without the Dark. As Crystal has mentioned previously, this is an extension of Out the Dark movement where we host a podcast where we talk about trauma and a part of, I guess, living well with Tiana. So here we are, and we have Miss Pastor Brianna Headen, therapist to me, angel to me, God sent and all the above, who is here with us today to talk about trauma and what that looks like and how it can show up in our life. And just to give a little bit more info about her, she is not only a pastor, but she has her master's in Christian counseling. She is a chaplain as well as a certified advanced Christian life coach, mental health coach, and a board certified pastoral counselor with a strong Christian worldview. So we welcome you, Miss Pastor Brianna Headen, to Out the Dark podcast.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. I really do appreciate this opportunity. I don't take it for granted. Um, so today we're going to be talking about trauma, something that I'm sorry, particularly love to talk about because a lot of times people are dealing with trauma and don't realize that that's what they're dealing with. Anxiety comes from trauma. um, the way that we handle our relationships, a lot of times they fail because of trauma, mental health issues and things of that nature, and how we view God. And I mean, so what is trauma? A lot of times people don't realize they've been through trauma. And so trauma is a emotional response to something that has happened to you in life that has been horrific, something terrible. It can be verbal abuse. It could be lack of parental love, the guidance, and the things that you need from your parentals. It could be one event such as a rape. It could be molestation. It could be even a natural disaster. You have some people that can't get over the fact that they went through a hurricane, in their life. Now they're living in fear, and that's a trauma, and they have trauma responses every time they look at the news and they see that a storm, a simple storm is coming, and so they start responding in a certain type of way. Trauma produces things that we call triggers,
Mhm.
things that would trigger the thought of the event that caused the initial trauma.
Mhm.
So it has such a lasting effect when we don't deal with it. I just had a podcast myself where we talked about trauma within relationships, and you can take that abroad. When we talk about our spouses, when we talk about our family ships, our friendships, our coworkers, any type of relationship that you have, your trauma has the ability to cause a relationship to either flourish or not flourish. And it can flourish in a negative way, and you think it's healthy, but it can flourish also in a way that's negative and destroy relationships. And so sometimes people can't realize why they're not staying in healthy relationships. Oftentimes you hear people say things like, nobody likes me, everybody is jealous of me, or I don't trust people. I don't want to get in a community relationship with anybody because everybody is the same, things of that nature. Sometimes people become recluse because they don't want to deal with, or they're afraid of what can happen. They don't want to go through that emotional experience again.
Right.
And so people actually get married, and their spouse does something to them, or does something or says something, and all of a sudden they break out into this response of one of their arguing, or I can't believe you said this to me. And it could have been something as, I don't like your shirt today, but it's triggering a place of memory from where perhaps maybe when they were growing up, they were never accepted. Nothing was ever done right. Everything was just awful. So that was traumatizing
Mhm.
for them. And so trauma has a really a way of just altering one's life, the way you think,
Right.
the way you see things, the way you talk about things, the way you see yourself, the way you view
Mhm.
the world, where everybody else is seeing the glass all full. You
Mhm.
can't even see it with a corner of water in it. Um,
Right.
it affects the way that you love. It really does. Some people have extreme responses to their triggers, and it causes other mental health issues, such as sometimes people can actually go into a what you call psychosis. Sometimes people actually will go into such extreme depression that they can't see the light of day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just so many areas of our life that trauma does affect, and if we don't address it, it can be a living nightmare for some.
And as I have just been in my own sessions with clients, it's like a lot of times as a child we go through things, and sometimes you may feel alone, you feel like you don't have the support that you should have for your from your parents. Maybe the parent doesn't know how to create the emotional space for you to be able to express what you're thinking, what you're feeling, expressing your emotions. And so we carry these things
Mm-hmm.
through childhood, through young adult, through adulthood. And it sometimes happens, I see, that once a parent has their own kids, that they realize, oh, wow, like the type of parent that I'm desiring to be, now I'm seeing, well, I didn't get that as a child. And then they come to therapy and realize, like, I need help in these areas, or they're ready to address the trauma. So I think even as young as children, when we go through things, we may not always have the words to put with what it is that we're experiencing. Maybe even then we think we normalize things as children that are traumatic. We don't have the understanding to know what should be happening versus what shouldn't be happening. So if you could just touch on that a little bit, and what you get from that.
Mhm. Yeah, because as children, all they know is what they are learning within their environment, and so whatever their environment is, whether it's toxic, whether it's dysfunctional, or whether it's normal, all they know is that what they see is normal to them. And so what happens is that they grow up, and they grow up with that dysfunction, and so when they go out into society, everything that's normal is dysfunctional to them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So then you have these same children who grow up and have children of their own, not realizing that they came from dysfunction. And sometimes they do realize they come from dysfunction after a while, but they don't, because it's such a learned behavior, they don't know how to unlearn it. And so they find themselves back in the same cycle of raising their children the way that they were raised.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where that vicious cycle of dysfunction within a family continues on to somebody says it stops with me. I need help, because what I went through was not right, and what I'm taking my children through is not right, and I need help. And
Mm-hmm.
so then you get to a space where not only the parents should be in counseling, but dependent upon the child and the things that they have been through, the child needs counseling as well. And then they get to a space where the parent actually has to get to the place of being able to admit and then being able to apologize. Because when
Mm-hmm.
we apologize for the things that we do to our children, it gives them the freedom to actually breathe.
That's good.
It does, because we're grown up in it, but we still have these feelings of this really doesn't feel right to me, but this is all I know.
Mm-hmm. And I think even with that is the parent being able to release themselves from the shame and from the guilt of how they have been parenting up to this point, and the process of forgiving themselves even from the things that they experienced that sometimes weren't even their fault. That was all that their parents knew.
Hmm. And learning, when you get a good therapist that teach you about capacities, we can only be as good as our capacity can allow us to be. And so if I had a parent that only had the capacity to be a provider, but emotionally they was not connected to me, but because of their past, that's all they knew. When I get to my therapist, if they're good at their job, then they're going to teach me about the capacity so I can forgive my parent and understand, and I can see them not just being my mom, but I can see them actually being, if Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah went through a lot. I can separate the mom from the woman and
Right.
understand that her life was only as it was horrible, and she only was doing what she knew to do.
That's
And then
good.
you can move from that and then get to the place of, it wasn't my fault. Yes, I deserve to be treated good. I deserve to be parented good. I deserved to be loved. But I understand that she didn't have the capacity to give me
Right.
what I needed. And because of that, she only did what she could. So I
Mm-hmm.
can forgive her, and I can get to the place of saying, you know what? I did deserve better. I didn't get it. I understand that I parented on the way that I felt I was supposed to. But now I can heal and move
Mm-hmm.
past that. And you don't, and sometimes people don't realize that trauma, when we go back in counseling and we address the issues of trauma, it's not to give us an excuse.
Yeah, that's
It's
good.
to be able to see what we went through, see why we are responding, but then to pick ourselves up and say, I'm no longer that person, and move on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's not to give anybody an excuse to continue to do what you have been doing. Now that I know better, no longer am I ignorant, but now that I know, I can handle myself with more self control because now
Right.
I have more knowledge of who I am.
And that's good because it even made me think about sometimes, you may get clients who come into therapy and they want to forget. They want to forget the things that happened to them. But how do you address someone who says that, knowing that we can't really forget the things that happened to us, but we can learn how to move forward with those things with a better understanding and learn how to re-identify ourselves from those things.
Mhm. First, you have to see if the person is really ready to address it. Everybody's not ready to address it. It was it would it has the possibility to send them even further back versus bringing them further. And so you have to wait till they get to the place where they can actually be okay with dealing with it, because some things are just that traumatic that if they deal with it before they're ready, then they will become worse off, if that makes sense. So if I was, a lot of times you find that with rape victims, and so if they went through a horrific rape, and to relive that thing, it could send them to a depressed place,
Mhm.
suicidal place. It can send them to a manic episode, and you don't want that for them. And so first you have to evaluate, make sure that they're healthy enough to address it. And then if they are, and they're just, I just don't really, and but that they can. Giving them tools and giving them the understanding that even though you want to forget something, subconsciously you haven't. And
Mhm.
the reason that you are acting in X, Y, and Z is because subconsciously you're still there. And so
Right.
let's bring it to the conscious so that we can address it, deal with it, and then you can move on. Will you ever forget it all the way? No. It's going to still be times where something reminds you of it, but you won't be affected by it.
Right. Right. And what would you say as like ways to cope? Like once you realize you have these trauma experiences that have shaped you into who you are. Now, how do you move forward and cope with these things?
Oh, well, you, because now you are at a place where you have self-identified and you are in a place of, again, self knowledge and knowing who you are. To know thyself is to only be true to yourself, right? And so now I understand that when my husband looks at me a certain way, it makes me feel it's a trigger. And so I'm not going to project that off on him. I might take a deep breath and say, he is not
Mm-hmm.
John from my past.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's looking at me like that because he actually loves me.
Right.
Um, and so just being able to identify, that's how you cope with it. Understanding, I feel this way because it's a trigger, and being able to breathe in and exhale it and moving on.
And as you were saying that, it just made me think about like sometimes, and I know I'm kind of like going back a little bit, but sometimes we don't realize how we carry our trauma in the body. So if you could just talk about that a little bit.
Oh yeah. I love talking about how we carry it within the body, because being a chaplain, one of my favorite parts of my job when I'm in that working in that capacity is that going in and seeing people with high blood pressure,
Yeah.
because that is one of the biggest ones. When we carry trauma within our bodies and we hold on to it, most people have high blood pressure, sugar diabetes, headaches. They're tensed in the neck, can't figure out why, can't find a comfortable position, and things of that nature. And so, um, it has the ability to have actual health um, effects on us. And so, when you begin to release, and when I say release, when you are able to get in an environment where it's safe enough for you to actually say, this is what's bothering me,
Mm-hmm.
and be able to actually express yourself without feeling as though um, shame or guilt. I like to use this story. I had a client that was in and out the hospital, in and out the hospital all the time. And he had actually, I had to work up the trust between us. But when we got there, he told me a story about when he was a little boy and living in a town where his family was considered outcast. And so going to school, they rejected him. They picked on him. His own family picked on him. And he felt like nobody liked him. He felt like nobody in the town liked him. He even felt like God didn't like him, because he had a view of God that, God, if he loved me, he wouldn't let all this stuff happen to me. So that was his viewpoint of God. And so as we began to talk and he began to tell me more and more details of things that had happened, and I began to give him the facts, the truth. I want the truth about who God is and how God does work and how things he went through this situation caused you to look at the next situation the same way, and you took it as though it was rejection. And we began to work through those things, and he looked and he was able to sit back, and it was right at that last session that we had that he said, I didn't deserve it. No, you didn't deserve it. Nothing that you went through was your fault, and you had every right to be upset. You should have been mad.
Right.
Sorry, nobody was there to protect you. But the fact and the truth of the matter was, God was with you the whole time,
Mm-hmm.
because things could have been way worse. And you went through what you went through because God knew you were strong enough, and he never let your hand go. So, that was just for that, that situation. But it was at the end of that when the doctor came in to do a checkup, he said this is the first time he has been in here all these times and his blood pressure has been normal.
Wow.
He was very I mean, he would just pick arguments with everybody. So what he was doing was pushing everybody away. He didn't want people to get close, even his own wife. But after all of that, and he was able to release, his wife even said that he was more loving towards her.
Mm. That's amazing. And what I also heard, which is good, because this is where I was the direction I was ready to go into, is how the things that we go through affect how we look at God.
Mhm.
And I even heard you say in that story, he said how all of the things he went through, how if God loved him so much, how could he have let me go through the things that I've went through? And I think that's a lot of people's explanation as to those who don't have a relationship with Christ. Like, if he really loved me, I wouldn't have went through the things that I have went through. So what do you say about that?
Mhm. Um, you know, depending upon, first of all, somebody's religious background,
Mm-hmm.
um, they already are, a lot of teachings are God is one of the things I used to use is God is a doom and gloom God, and it's like, no, God's not really like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but yeah, so when you go through certain things in your life, rejection and trust issues, and I mean just all kinds of horrendous things, it's hard for you to approach a God that you can't see.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's hard for you to trust a God that you can't see. And so helping a person understand that, when we go to God in prayer, It's not, you don't have to get down on your knees. You don't have to do all that. Just be, even when you're mad,
Mhm.
you have the right to tell God, I'm mad.
Right.
And you don't have to worry about God becoming angry at you. You might not like the answer he gives you when
Mhm.
he does talk back, but that's God. So if I went through rejection from my childhood on up into adulthood, then I might look at God as though he's rejecting me because I'm not good enough.
Mm.
So because I'm not good enough to people and they reject me, how can God accept me? And unless somebody comes alongside you to help you process through all of that, you're going to carry it.
Mhm.
So, if you have somebody on here now that's listening and they're thinking, God can't love me or God is rejecting me based upon how people have treated you, then I want to let you know uh, that that is not true. That is false, because there's nothing that we could ever do in life that would ever make God reject us and
Mhm.
ever make God call us anything but good. Because when He created us, He called us good, regardless of what we are going through, regardless of what we have done. I don't
Mhm.
care what you've done today, yesterday, or last year. God still looks at you and still calls you by name. He
Mhm.
still calls you by the name He's called you. He still is looking at what He's placed on the inside of you, because you still have treasures. Because people reject you doesn't mean nothing. People
Mhm.
rejected Jesus, but it didn't cause him not to do what he was called to do.
Right.
You just got to get to that place of understanding and building your relationship with
Mhm.
God, because he's there for you just as well as he's there for anybody else.
That's true. And that like and I guess because I'm such a person, like I'm so attuned like with just like relationships and how they work, and especially now since I have my own relationship with God, it's just like the more we work on our relationship with him, it literally trickles down into
Mhm.
it trickles down to our relationship that we have with ourselves. Because if he says I am fearfully and wonderfully made and I am all of these things, then I begin to look at myself like that, and that begins to help me understand and look at people the same way. But when there's a disconnect between us and God and our relationship, it reflects itself.
Mhm. Mhm. It does, because God is a relational God. And so my theology is that love God, love God's people.
Mhm.
And just in that order. Because if I love God, when I get to the place, and I want people to understand that this is not something that you get overnight. You don't just gain this relationship with God overnight. No, you have to work at it. You have to talk to him constantly. You have to, I mean, and prayer is not all about you getting on your knees. I literally can walk and talk. I can, with God, I can literally be washing my dishes and be talking to God. Prayer is not the way that you oftentimes see people, Lord, and things of that nature. I go and I talk to my Father, and I'm like, Lord, I don't understand what's going on here. Why give me the understanding that I need of this situation? Or Lord, I just want to tell you thank you, because you're just so good to me. And I don't, it's not what people necessarily think. You can actually have a journal and write in your journal, and that's a prayer. That, as long as you're communicating with God, communicate, prayer is nothing but communication with God, right? So um it's not something that you just build overnight. A relationship with God, you have to work on it, and you have to work on it daily. That's just like your friend. You don't just talk to your friend one sometime. But if you're like me, I'm talking to I have my girlfriends. We're on the phone constantly, or we're texting constantly, to the place where we could be in a crowded area. If they call my name, I'm gonna know which one is calling me, because I know their voice. So the more that you're in relationship and you're building that relationship with God, the more you're gonna be in tune with his voice. And it also, the way that it trickles down is that he says, so love God, love yourself, love your neighbor. We oftentimes want to leave out the middle part of loving yourself.
Right.
So when you have trauma and you are building this relationship with God, what God is doing is teaching you how to love yourself, because God is telling you how much he loves you. You're
Mm-hmm.
seeing little stuff that God is doing. The more I pray to God, and I'm starting to see God answer my prayers, it's like, wow, he's heard me. He's answering me. He loves me. I am lovable. And it makes me love myself even more because God is doing
Mm-hmm.
this for me. And so it gives you, it's just like in a natural, where when you are being loved by your mom or being loved by your dad, and it's like you get this overwhelming joy, and it makes your self-esteem comes up, your head is lifted up. That's how it is with God. And so you're learning to love yourself how God is loving you. You are learning to look at yourself the way that God is looking at you. And so the
Mm-hmm.
trauma, which is, and I want us to touch on it if we have time, but the trauma that we deal with, it's in our soul.
Mm.
And so God deals with the soul. It's the soul that needs to be saved, not the spirit. The spirit goes back to God. That's God's spirit. It's the Holy Spirit. It doesn't need to be saved, but it's our soul. It's the fight is for the soul, right? And so as we are in relationship with God and He is loving us, we're learning to love ourselves. It's in the love that we're becoming healed.
Mm.
So how does it trickle down? So now that I love God, I love myself. He's healing me. He's taking some things out and placing some things in. I'm getting the joy. I'm getting this love. So when I look at people, I can love them
Yeah.
because now my perspective has changed. It's changed. No matter how people say things, even if it hurts, I know where to run.
Right. Yeah.
I don't have to respond emotionally. I know where to run because now I have this relationship. And to be in his presence, it's like nothing I've ever experienced.
Mm.
Taste and see that the Lord is good. I've tasted. So now I'm going to run back to my Father and say, Lord, and He might say to me, you know what? Because it's this area I need you to work on. I allow that to happen because you're still dealing with rejection.
Right.
There's still pieces of you that still deals with rejection. And so you took that the wrong way, but we're going to work on this.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it works. And so then I come out from my prayer room or my time with God, and I view the world different.
Right.
I just view it different because God always deals with us individually. I don't get to go to God and think God is going to deal with me about my mother, my father. He's going to say, I'm your mother, I'm your father.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He's going to say, I'm with you, I love you. Is what He wants us to look at, what we do have, not at what we don't. The enemy will want you to live in your trauma and say everything is this, this, and this. When God says, no, look at what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
I know what you've been through. I know you're hurting, but I'm here to clean up every scab, every wound. I'm here to clean it out and to let it heal from the inside out so that you can be whole. I don't just come to heal you, but I come to make you whole.
No.
So that's when you're dealing with trauma and you're talking about relational, um, you know, having a proper relationship stems from that relationship with God. That's how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't always, sometimes people are saying, well, I can't get to a therapist. I don't have nobody I could God is when you work on that relationship, because in the beginning of my walk with God, I didn't have none of the tools that I have, um, that I try to make available to people. And so
Mm-hmm.
my ministry is I say that God's called me to do something that has never been done, so that when I build it, I can be to people what I didn't have. So that's how I'm able to say, hey, guess what? If you don't have it, God is right here and it
Mm-hmm.
can't be done, but you have to work on it. How bad do you want to be healed? How bad is the pain? The pain was too bad it was so bad for me. I was like, look, Lord, just take me as I am.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, take all this stuff. Take it. I just cannot sit at your feet. And
Right. Yeah.
you are. Um, so when you want it, it's there for you. The woman with the issue of blood had went to all the physicians. She went everywhere, everywhere. She had spent all that she had. She had nothing left. Let me try Jesus. And I don't care about blood being on my skirt. I
Right.
don't care about them. They done posted my face up. Tell me, don't let this woman come out. She's unclean. I don't care about none of that. I'm gonna press my way. If I can't do nothing but touch the hem of this man's garment,
Right.
because
Yeah.
he's been doing some wonderful things.
And there's two more things. I Yeah, we got about 21 minutes. So there's two more things that I that as you were talking, that is just keep sticking with me. When you called him father, um, and how if one may have a relationship with their natural father, they don't have one in and out. What does that look like in trying to create a relationship with God?
Hmm. Well, for one, I love this. So, um, it would be hard if you went to him at trying to call him father. I know the Bible says that our spirits, we say Abba Father, but it also says that he's Elohim. He's everything.
Mhm.
He's everything. And so if you got to first start off in a relationship looking at him as just a friend, because Jesus said, no longer do I call you servants, I call you friend.
Mhm.
Let me call you friend first. Let me go to you as a friend, because God can be whatever you need him to be in the capacity that you need him to be, the situation you need, whatever it is. A friend, a mother, he can be a mother, he can be a father, he can be a brother, sister, and he just can be everything. So, I would encourage you, don't look at the father aspect.
Mhm.
Go to him as a friend, because sometimes a friend is better than anything else anyway.
That is true.
He's a friend that would stick closer than any brother. So learn to see him as a friend first, because really, in reality, our parents, even though they're our parents, they're also our friend.
Mhm.
If you think about it, if you got a right relationship with your parent, my children, they'll come to me and talk to me about things that friends.
Mhm.
I mean, we might go right down the street bopping our head to some type of music that they don't.
And the other question was, I feel like as the society today, we are acknowledging going to therapy more than in the past, and looking at therapy as a means to grow, a means to heal, a means to evolve. Whereas in the past, I feel like the narrative was more of don't go, share our family business. What happens in this house stays in this house. So not really being aware of who all of our audience is, but maybe we have people who are of older generation who may still have that mindset. What would you say to them?
Hmm. I think a part of that narrative was that if you went to therapy, it meant something was wrong with you,
Hmm.
and that's not necessarily always the case. Something is wrong with me, but it doesn't mean that I have a mental health issue.
Right.
Um, Sometimes we just need to process.
Hmm.
If I'm not ever given permission to process, then I'm holding all this stuff in,
Right.
and you can't always go to other people who don't want to hear it. Everybody don't want to always hear what we're going through or how we feel.
Hmm.
Sometimes people listen to what we have to say, and they are like, "Wow, I don't know why you feel that way." So you just sometimes need a place where you can really process. I need to process some things that I can't necessarily say to everybody, even as a pastor. I have a counselor. I have a person that I talk to because I need to process, because there are some things that I go through that I can't go and talk to somebody else. I can't go and talk to my friends about it. Um, I can't just go and talk to a family member about it. I need to talk, process it in a safe
Hmm.
space. And so, you know, therapy is not always just about going and getting a pill. That's a psychiatrist. That's an actual doctor. We as therapists come in to help you see sometimes where you are viewing things from possibly a trauma um, space or a place, or sometimes we're there to help you with what we call stinking thinking, because sometimes you can get in a rut and just start thinking negative, and to help you unclutter your mind. Um, and then there are some times where you do need to be able to acknowledge that maybe there is something chemically going on here.
Hmm.
Maybe it is chemical. And so if it's chemical, again, it's not your fault. You can't help when chemicals aren't, um, working correctly, that's not your fault. So, if you can get the help that you need, and then that way you get your chemicals balanced, and then you start seeing your life on track again.
Right.
So, we got to get out of that space, out of that thinking that because you're going to counseling, something is wrong with you.
Mm.
Mm-mm. Um, and that old way of thinking, like you said, where don't go telling nobody about our family, things like that. That was a way of what I tell people of giving you a gag, like a gag order. You know, you could be going through pure hell in your house. How
Yeah.
fair is it for you not to be able to go and release that stuff? My mama and daddy, they are fussing and fighting every
Right.
day, every day. And then here it is, you have to grow up in that. You can't tell nobody nothing. And guess what? You get in a marriage and now you fussing and fighting every day.
Right.
You just reliving a whole nother cycle of what you lived through. And so because you didn't get to heal, you didn't get an understanding of what really was going on. You think that's what love is all about. That is not love. Whatever the reason they had to stay together and doing all what they were doing wasn't beneficial for you.
Right.
So that's what I would tell people. Therapy actually keeps us good. One of my clients told me, they said, I come to you because it keeps me good,
Mhm.
keeps me from going off, keeps me from saying stuff I don't need to say. So I come to you and I get to dump it on you. And I'm
Mhm.
like, yeah, you get to dump it on me, because I know how to not to carry it. I know how not to wear it and to go on. It's a place of, I don't know your people. So you don't have to worry about me looking at your people upside their head.
Right. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. So therapy is just I tell people all the time, therapy is one of the best places that you can go and get what you really need. And
Mhm.
we're not running your life. We're not going to have you running around the block. You know, we're just helping you see that a lot of times what you need, you already possess it.
Yes. Oh, you already possess everything that you need. That's good. That's good. And what about the mental health aspect of it all? Anxiety, depression, I think those are sometimes the most common two mental health concerns that people face. So what is some things that you have to say about that?
Mhm. I think mental health is one of the things that has been on the rise with people ever since COVID. People had to actually sit with themselves and never had to sit with themselves, which is another reason why therapy is becoming so popular, is because it's like, oh wow, I've never look at these thoughts I'm having,
Mhm.
look at how I'm feeling. And so mental health has people have had to get to a place where they realize that I'm doing all of this stuff. I'm seen, especially for leaders, I'm seen as a leader, and I'm really falling apart,
Mhm.
And so when we talk about mental health is not mental health is not just what people think is um, depression where you have to take a pill. That's chemical. Sometimes you're depressed because it's a situational depression.
Mhm.
It's your situation that's causing you to be depressed. It's not chemicals. So let's get to a place of changing your situation. But that's still a mental health issue.
Right.
Um, Sometimes when you think about anxiety is not always because it is chemicals or but it's about your body's way of responding to certain things that's going on, stressors. But
Mhm.
sometimes it can be you remove certain stuff out your life, your anxiety's gone. And so to address that stuff is something that you need to, because it is affecting your mental health
Mhm.
either way, whether it's again chemical or it is just something that you can fix and you won't have to deal with it. But if you don't deal with it, you're going to see a lot of mental health, your
Right.
mental health really suffering. You are gonna experience anxiety because you're not addressing what you need to address. Every strong person still needs to feel as though they can be weak.
Yeah. Oh. Mm.
Not being able to do that, you suffer mentally. You suffer because you get to a place where you feel like you got to fix it. I got to fix it. I got to be this. I got to keep wearing this mask, and it's like it's not fair to you. It's not fair.
That struck a nerve in me. That's good. So as a therapist, like what are some tools that you could um that you feel like maybe even as your clients that you see that they need in like this, in a moment like this, in a world like this, where trying to hold on to hope and trying to just believe, like what do you say to encourage or inspire or uplift somebody?
Mhm. For one, I try to get people to look at the sun,
Hmm.
the light, because even though you might be surrounded by darkness, there is some light somewhere.
Hmm.
There's always going to be light somewhere. Understanding moments. Some moments are longer than others, but this is only a moment. And when this moment is over, when you get to the other side, it will be better there than it is now. So we got to learn how to cope. We got to learn how to just see the flowers along the way, see the little patches of grass along the way, thanking God that, hey, well, you know what? He woke me up another day, not so you can be in misery, but
Hmm.
just because He knows that there is greater for you, hope for the greater.
Hmm.
See the light, see the and appreciate those that do come, even if they're strangers that
Right.
show you love. So being able to see things like that, understanding that, hey, I might not be able to eat a steak, but I got oodles and noodles. Thank you,
Hmm.
Lord. You know, um, I might not have the clothes I want, because it a lot of times it's little things that
Yeah.
people aren't really looking at. I don't know how I'm gonna pay my rent. They might put me out. Well,
Mhm.
let's look around. Let's see who is in our circle. Let's see who loves us enough that will offer. And sometimes people
Yeah.
say, I don't want nobody. That's causing you to stay with that's causing you to stay down because you're allowing pride. So let's move past this pride. Let's talk about it. Where is it coming from? And now
Mhm.
let's go to Sarah, because Sarah really does love you. And Sarah's really been reaching out to you. You just hadn't wanted her to know what you got going on.
Right. And then okay, I love the way you took that. So you have the person who's experiencing these symptoms who they may not be able to realize that the sun and the light is in this person who's their friend, this person who's their cousin, even sometimes it can be spouse. So what do you say to the person on the other end of that who who wants to be support and show up for this person, but maybe Sarah isn't acknowledging the love and the light that is being shown through this person?
Hmm. Um, you can only do what a person allows you to do. But don't, unless it's a aggressive situation, and something like that. But constantly show up,
Mhm.
even if it's for 5 minutes, even if it's a text, even if it's a card, even if it's some flowers. Um, the more that you love on a person, those walls eventually are going to come down.
Mhm.
So when they do get to the place where they can realize, oh, I do need to talk to you. So
And I
never point a finger, never fault, never fuss. Just constantly be a support, a presence, and a love.
Mhm. Mhm. And I think, because I think even in our sessions, and as I just listen to you, I'm so grateful that the Lord has literally blessed us with a relationship that can be far beyond of just you and I's clinical sessions, and how we can bring it forth and be able to give people something that obviously He knows that they need.
Mhm.
Because I think for me, even as I went through sessions, I had shared with you that I had a friend who I believed that was dealing with depression. And for me, I sometimes felt offended because I'm trying to be that friend, but how I'm trying to show this person love isn't being taken, being acknowledged. So like, how do you try to put yourself aside enough to be there for that person?
Yeah, yeah, and that's what I mean. That's the key. I'm sorry, is putting yourself aside, because you got to realize that um, we all got some type of baggage that we carry, and so when I'm trying to love on somebody and they're constantly rejecting me, I got to first of all stop and say, why am I feeling like this?
Right.
Why is it making me feel like this? What is this reminding me of? Because if I know somebody's depressed and I know this, then I understand that right now they might not want it or realize they need it,
Mhm.
but I'm not going to stop being who I am
Right.
based off of their reaction. And I
Yeah.
mean, because sometimes people that are depressed really, I mean, in their mind, they're like, I just want to be left alone. I just want to be left alone. But even if it's nothing more than a card in the mail,
Mhm.
even if it's nothing more than a text, and they might not respond. But guess what? When it's that time for them to respond, when it's that time for them to reach out, they're going to know who to reach out to.
Yeah.
Or, Lord forbid, but this is very real situations. Something happens and a person does try to commit suicide. Let's say that. You don't have to live with the guilt of saying, I didn't do nothing,
Yeah.
because that's how the enemy will come and try to be at you. That you, oh, I should have, I stopped reaching out, or you start making excuses. Well, I tried and they pushed me. No,
Mhm.
just keep being who you are, because if that's who you are as a person, never let something change who you are. Change your character. Let your character be your character. That's what integrity is all about. Regardless of the situation, I still am who I am. I'm
Mhm.
still walking my character and in my integrity, regardless if you want me to or not.
Mhm. And you just it's like you reading my mind. It's crazy because I was wanted to end to kind of go in this direction to end. So what would you say to someone who is having thoughts of suicide, who feels like, they've held on as long as they could and they don't have the strength to hold on any longer? What is something that you would say to them?
Um, you know, it's not too late. I
Mhm.
know your mind. I know how you're feeling, and it makes you feel. I know you're feeling as though there's nothing else left for you to do. It would be better if you just close your eyes. It would be better for other people that are around you. But indeed, that is a lie. It is a lie. If you close your eyes today, if you took your life today, you would leave a trail of people who would immersely, enormously just miss you, and have thoughts
Mhm.
of why. There's help for you. You don't have to go through this alone. It's all right to cry. It's all right that you can that to admit that you feel that way.
Mhm.
you know if you have to call the suicide line, if you have to go to um, someone that you normally don't talk to but you feel l- like you can, then
Mhm.
do it. But whatever you do, never let this state that you're in make a decision cause you to make a decision
Mhm.
that would affect so many people. What you're going through is, you're not the first, you're not going to be the last. It's all right. It really is all right. There's nothing wrong with you.
And I just also want to add, as you mentioned, if you needed to reach out to anybody, the National Suicide Hotline number is 988. So you can call, I think you can call and text that number if you need someone to reach out to.
Hmm.
And just as we end here, what is some advice you would give to someone if they feel like, well, after listening to this, they think, well, maybe I need to assess and see, like, how am I being triggered in any way? Have I went through anything that I felt like has been a traumatic experience to me? Like what was something you would just end off by saying?
For people who might be feeling like they are being triggered by other people, or,
Hmm.
or things. Well, we all know when something happens. We might not know in the moment when we're being triggered, but we know afterwards that we have reacted in a way that we probably should not have reacted, and that's when something. I'm dealing with something.
Mm-hmm.
Why did I react, overreact? Because triggers make you overreact, or even sometimes underreact. So when I say under, sometimes people they are professionals at shutting people off,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So when you know that you're overreacting or underreacting, there is something there, and it's time to really sit down and evaluate,
Mm-hmm.
what is this? Why is this making you feel the way that you're feeling?
Mm-hmm. And another thing I would just say is trust the process and give yourself grace. Because as you were saying, like sometimes what we know is all we know until we become conscious and self-aware of it. So, and then take the necessary steps then to move forward and learn how to cope with those things. So
Oh, yes.
it's Pastor Headen that we have here with us.
Thank you. Thank you again for having me.
Yes. And
You-
please tell them how they can reach out to you for therapy if someone needs it, any platforms that you have personally, please share all of that.
Okay. So the easiest way you can find me and book a session, because my links will be on there. If you go to Facebook, Overcomers Soul Care and Life Coaching, you will find me there, and you will find the link to book a session with me. You can always go to I think Black Girl Therapy,
Therapy for Black girls. Hmm.
Therapy for Black Girls, and you can find me on there as well. I believe you can type in Brianna Headen, and I should come up. Um, but then I also have my own podcast called The Healing Place, and you can look that up. There's another podcast called the same thing, but just type in The Healing Place podcast, and you will see us there. We are on all the major platforms. Um, as well as Facebook. We're on Spotify, Apple, iTunes, Amazon, iHeart podcast, and Google, wherever you can find a podcast is where we're at. Um, and so if you are in the local area and you're looking for a church home in Greensboro, you can find us at United in Christ in Greensboro, North Carolina, 3921 Anderson Street. Hold on, y'all. That is wrong. 44, 26 Anderson Street, Greensboro, North Carolina. But you can find us there. Um, you can email me at briannaheaden@icloud.com for any questions or concerns, or if you just want prayer. But that's how you can reach me.
Amazing. We thank you so much. I thank you so much for just extending your knowledge, your wisdom to help come important to our family over here at the dark. And again, I just pray that God continues to bless you, keep you in all your ways, and to our family, continue to stay tuned to what God has in store for Out the Dark. And we will see you soon.
Thank you.